Good afternoon. Um, so this is the Burnham Morrill Baked Bean Factory, Portland, Maine. You've all seen it. You've all driven by it many times. I've driven by it for many decades, and always thought it would be a great building to model. Great factory, great structure, but it's so huge, so sprawling. I never thought it would be possible or that I would ever do it. Whoops. So let me go back to the fact that I have a freelance layout. And, most of us have freelance layouts, and mine's not very big. It's fair, medium sized, but a freelance layout. And very few people think about or plan a prototype layout. Maybe somebody like Peter McKinney with a big basement can model from Fort Fairfield on down to Searsport, the whole Bangor Rustic, or Chris Oliver can model the UP all the way across northern California, the Donner Pass, and but if you take a small chunk, the Heritage Museum in Union, New Hampshire does a beautiful job in a small B&M layout there in a defined space. But I started off freelance. I said, well, I've got to choose, a place. Let's call it the Boston, Maine. That's where I live. It's all around me. Next step was let's start in 1953. I like transition, steam diesel. So then next step is becoming a member of the B&M Railroad Historical Society and gather all the great prototype information that they have to offer. Then you start collecting reference books, and you have all these beautiful pictures and things that you get inspired by. So it's just as Bob said, you're looking for really inspiration of what you want to do next, and how to make something different. And you get into scratch building, and you do a lot of scratch building and learn your techniques and everything. And obviously, finally, along the way, a lot of prototype scratch building as well. So this is going to be more of a talk, continuation of Bob's on prototype scratch building, and the tips that I would recommend that I use sort of to go through this process to achieve my token prototype layout. It's obviously not a prototype layout. It's still a freelance layout. So, but a lot of enjoyment in prototype structures. So this is back to the Burnham and Morrill Company, founded in 1867. George Burnham, Charles Morrill, canned meats, vegetables, fish. Great success with canned corn. Had great success, so they could build this factory where it is now in 1913. Wasn't till the 20s when they started brick oven baked beans. 1930s operation 24 hours a day. They were so successful. And what brought this into the news recently was Northeastern University buying it as a technology graduate school. So we have a direct descendant of the B&M building here, Bob. Bob's father worked there, so he could give us commentary as we go on here. So tips. I'll give you some tips on what I do to get into prototype modeling. And one is collecting photographs, and this is a great example because you can collect. You have a standing building. It's available. You can go and take as many pictures as you want. You want to collect. You want to get pictures up close. You want to get detail as much as you can. You want to get it from all sides. I have done prototype structures in the past. A railroad station in Winnisquam where I had one photograph, one 3/4 photograph where you have two sides. You have the front, you have the side. And when you have that and there's no other pictures available, you have to extrapolate with your imagination. And The other side is going to be similar to the one you just built. The backs doesn't matter because it's on the back, but you can use your imagination and make these structures. So I think there's a lot of freedom in building prototype structures. I don't believe in things needing to be exact. But beautiful structure with brick, with concrete. Started off as concrete, and then they painted it white at some point. I don't know. There's whoops, sorry. The wrong thing. There is the 4-story and then the 5-story. Again, this is huge and sprawling. You've got to decide how much you're going to bite off. Here's an old picture, and here's the concrete before painting. I'm thinking this is 1940. Can anybody identify that car? You know, so I don't know. I think it's about 1940s sometime. So my guess, but from this picture, I mean, these are 8/8 windows, 180 feet long, the main structure, 2-story over here, which I'm not going to include. Structures over there, 180 feet long, vent on top. We'll come back to, and this is the eye catcher. This beautiful, beautiful sign on top, which is different over the years. Front door has always been there, and I've changed things around. So now here's, I think, obviously the sign on the roof is gone. We have a new blue sign. I don't know the date on this, but the ornamental brick is so great to catches my eye, and I want to model that. But vents, and I don't know if you could see, I mean, there's all sorts of vents. These vents are placed in different arrangements. And you have 2 window sections, you have 3 window sections, you have 2 end sections with 1, 2, 3 windows, 1, 2, 3. In the center, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have full brick walls, you have small walls with big windows, you have half windows, and things change over the years. So, you know, again, there's, when you're doing a prototype, you got to choose what decade am I going to model, and nobody's going to know because nobody's taken those pictures at the exact time, but you're going to model that. But painted white, the sign, all right. Here's an end picture, which has these, so we've got stacks. We have this stack in here, tucked in behind, that I did include. We've got all of this piping up front that's probably gas piping, obviously later date. We've got all of these vents that we talked about. We've got these piping that goes up and down the wall. We've got these brown vents. Not much you can say about the roofs. The roofs are, you can't see much on these buildings. Any building they do a prototype on, hard to tell about the roof. But the midsection is recessed. So you've got to, we'll get down the way and talk about how you plan your instructions, as Bob said. You got to make your own instructions, and how am I going to recess that center part with 2 wings that stand out. Again, the front door has always been there. The gas piping, vents up and down all over the place, fans, big fans, window placement sign. You could print this. You could you know, do a contemporary model and just print that sign, and very easy to print signs off your own photographs. You know, you try to get it square on, and that's easily done.
So,
Yeah.
is the building still there?
Oh yes,
Oh, okay.
oh yes, and again, I think it's going to change, but I think Northeastern is going to, you know, is going to change it into something. Technology graduate school is
No, I was just curious,
historic,
Protected building.
protected.
but I was just thinking if it's still there, you could get current view shots from the satellites.
Yes, yeah, yes. I didn't need to do that. I tried to limit this to a 2-month project. So you've got nice vents or stacks on the ends. Same front door. and the railroad bridge in the background. We'll talk about that. The wharf where you've got this canning annexation, and I don't know. Again, end pictures. Again, more pictures, more end walls, round vents, heights. A lot of great stuff that you could model, and I did not have the space. And the backside, the lighting is not very good, and so I didn't do too much different on the backside. I put in piping on the backside. I put in, this is my track side, so I put in a loading dock on the backside, and again, away from prototype, different from prototype, just what I needed. Here we go. I don't know. Now we have a red sign, and is this the demolition, or is this the or the fixing or repair? What did you say your father helped build this?
He built the chimney, yeah. I honestly don't know, just looking, you got the Christmas tree on the right.
Yep.
Um,
These have been taken over a decade.
yeah, I would say that's maintenance. Because they were still using that up until about 4 years ago, 3.5 or 4 years ago, then they
Yeah.
moved somewhere.
Right. All right. And all right. Next in prototype modeling, Sanborn maps. These are so essential. And Sanborn maps were not railroad maps, they're insurance maps, 1866 to the 1970s, ICC maps. Peter McKinney can find these ICC maps from the Library of Congress, and he collects these things, and they show great information. But here is a 1953. Here's the whole site. Here's the Grand Trunk Railroad coming out of Portland, across the bridge, the dock. Here's the main building with the two-story section. I'm concentrating on this middle section here, but you've got all sorts of, that's not showing up on our wall here. But Sanborn maps are so great and obviously this is supposed to be gray, and that's going to be concrete. You know, this pink is brick, yellow is wood structure, blue I'm not quite sure. So, but there's all sorts of information included in the Sanborn maps of what's the boiler room, what's the cannery, what's the storage room, where's the offices. And there's great information that you get from these. Here we go. I still can't read it, but so fireproof construction, built 1940s, 46, 47, packing, third floor, kitchen, fourth floor. You know, there's all sorts of information that's listed on, and these Sanborn maps are readily available online, from your library, from Library of Congress, various places. So if you want to do a prototype model, this gives you so much great information. Main building at 180 feet. I did not have that room. So what are we going to use? And so wood, styrene, plaster, paper. Well, so you've got to decide sort of ahead of time. And Bob's talked a lot about styrene, and people have talked about wood. Well, I'm going to use mat board. So this is all mat board construction, and it's all clad in styrene, but a lot of mat board in there. So windows, I always start with the windows, and obviously the original 8/8. I always draw out, you know, you're going to draw out the walls, and I always start with the windows. And so 8x8 windows had window panes that were so tiny, I was not going to be able to see in and see my interior structure. So I chose 4/4. So this is 4/4, and And simply because I wanted to see inside the building and not do the prototype 8/8. So Tichy windows seem perfect. These are framed windows, not masonry windows. It's a masonry window building, but you recess your windows, your framed windows, and through the decades, the windows change on these buildings anyway. So, but the walls are mat board for thickness. So this is a brick or concrete building. You got to make it thick. So the mat board helps with that. The windows fit fine in there, recessed as needed. Styrene on the outside, brick and ornamental detail was a big part of this model. So my model is 71 feet long. So it ended up about 1/3 the size of the prototype. And I could make it 3-story, 4-story, 5-story. Well, 3-story looked best, the proportion. So the important thing is keeping your proportions to the original correct. It would look very bizarre if it were a 5-story building this size.
Sorry to interrupt, but why did you say you start with the windows? Out of all the things to start thinking about, why windows?
So windows help me size the building. This is going to be a building inspired by the Burnham and Morrill factory. And so my windows help me size the wall length, section depth, everything. Now, there's enough windows out there to find just the right one, but that window helps you size the windows. And I have done big structures, so I can't get up there and with my tape measure and see what size, I could do it, but I can't. So
Trust me.
The center section is recessed. You got a plan for that. Interior detail, a plan for that. Lighting, plan for that. Entryway, I moved to the end because that's how this layout's set up. Loading dock on the track side I showed you. Truck loading on the other end is not prototypical, and inspired. So that's, this is not exact. So, and you have to have plans whenever you're scratch building anything, scratch building a prototype, scratch building your own thing. You've got to have plans, and I always draw the plans and then build the mock-up. So here's where Will's question comes in. You're planning out, the window. Of course, it doesn't show up well. So the window dimension, and then how does that look? How tall should I make that? Because you're looking at your prototype pictures, and everything is proportioned correctly. Whoops. And so you're, so the windows, you're starting with the windows. You can't make a wall and then say, okay, and then I just don't do it that way. And so the end walls usually have 3 window sections. I made them 2. And I've got, instead of 3 window sections, I have 2. Instead of 6, I have 2. Instead of 3, I have 2. So it's downsized. That's it. And so then here's my map board. Map it all out on there. You have to, these come as double windows, but I'm going to make triple windows by cutting a window in half and putting two together. So you got to make your windows before you cut out your map board. So this is a lot of choices in brick that I've used. This is a new product to me. This is rail scale models. This is a compressed hard paper, 1/16 of an inch, 6/16,000ths of an inch. And with adhesive backing, you peel off the back. Talk about that, but spray it white, and then dry brush on the brick color of your choice. And so this had to be a red chromate primer, I think, something like that. So then you are just making your own construction plans, and so it's like building a kit without construction, make your own, and you've got to really know what you're doing before you start. So how are the windows going in? How are the corners coming together? So there's layers. So there's mat board and styrene, and how are you going to do these corners? So that's key. And then how to brace it. Everything's got to be braced. So here you calculate the corners, 2 layers, plan ahead. Here's the mat board, cutting out windows. One thing I didn't mention is that all of these window sections repeat. So, they're all vertically the same width, easy to do. Horizontally, they may be the same, and then you could just mix and match. The bottom is different, so different dimensions, but as far as higher brick. So there's a lot of similarities all the way through this. Mat board base, I'm going to put everything around the mat board base. I'm not going to put it on top of the mat board base. I'm going to put it outside the mat board base and squeeze it together. Windows and half windows. So I use 3M transfer tape to put my styrene and my brick onto my mat board. 3M transfer tape is great sticky stuff. So I love it. So you've got a horizontal trim piece below the window, a 40 by 40 thousandths. You've got, that's 40 thousandths thick. You've got your brick, which is 16 thousandths thick, and then you've got 40 thousandths styrene below that. This your cement layer below that. So the brick is recessed. You've got a nice reveal, and the brick is recessed, and it really stands out nicely. And that was all planned ahead. And okay, here's a double window. Here's a triple window. You cut that, and you sandwich those together, and you make triples. So simple as that. So here are some walls and variations on walls. Same brick dimensions, different brick dimensions, and again, you're just looking at your prototype photographs, and I move these around depending on what I wanted inside. So I'm already thinking about what my interior details are and where my brick ovens are and where my office is and where packing and storage and everything like that, and where these are. So these windows are sort of positioned somewhat to help with that. So finishing walls models early or late, we all had you could finish a whole model in naked basswood and then paint the whole thing, spray the whole thing. And I tend to finish walls before they go up. So these are almost fully finished except for the ornamental brickwork. So here's the mat board base that I'm going around. Here's the recess center. Here is the cross section. Here is the cross section to give this short wall coming out. So wall supports you've got to put on before you build this, before you put it up. The windows went in, the shades on the windows that were in the old 1940s prototype picture. Each window potentially has light leak because I used a lot of interior lighting here. So I put little strips of paper, got 1/8 wide strips of paper, and just glued them around each window. So these are interior trim boards just to hide any light leaks. But you got to do that before you put it all together. Interior details. All right. Wooden crates for sending out cans of baked beans. These were just cut from 1/4-inch wood from my shop. Barrels for molasses, eight 1/4-inch styrene tubing that I just made, and these are all the barrels back here and all the boxes in the shipping department. Here's the office up front, and just I use a lot of balsa in making desks and couches and all sorts of things. And then starting to put in parts from an old radio that I bought at the local thrift store for $3.50. So I just took this all apart and cut it up, and you've got lots of old parts from the radio, and I just stuck these things in here and there, and from when I turn on the lights and you look inside, you don't know what you're looking at. So so these are just all interesting, bizarre structures. All right, and here are my 3 brick ovens made from 3/4-inch dowels and cotton shaped, and you know, so the first floor goes on, the second floor goes on, and the lights, and now we're going to get into lighting. So here are, and I've got, we could pass that around. Peter, yeah, right behind the building there, I think is LED, a package of LED lights that I use. So you could pass, yeah, that package. You could pass that around. So this was, these are nice. You know, there's obviously 100 choices online, and these are nice because they're flat. And I just put these under the floor, glued them to the floor. Warm white. They're all pre-wired and etc. And I had to decide, was I going to bundle these things horizontally? There's a light in each room, 9 rooms, 9 lights. I decided to bundle them vertically, come down the front, notch the mat board, bundle the wires, come down to the bottom, solder them all together, outdoor connectors. So this thing can be disconnected, and so yeah, planning ahead with your instructions. So 3 floors, 9 lights, all to one connector. There it is without the front wall on. And you know, just yeah, so interesting, but Bob will have to tell us if this looks anything like the factory that he toured.
Well, my dad worked at B&M from 1947 to 1974. And the ovens that Tom has were taken out, I don't know exactly when, but sometime post World War II. And he built the ovens that are still there. I assume they're still there. He had his 2 or 3 man crew. And I tell people they're probably a third, they're this wide as this room, and the third as long as the whole thing. And there was a huge, and I don't even know what floor they were on, to be perfectly honest, but there was a tram system suspended from the ceiling above them. The pots were 6 or 8 feet in diameter. There were huge steel doors that opened in the top of the ovens. Pots were run over the top. They were dropped down in. The doors closed, and they baked for like 20 hours. And I did get to go through it a couple of times, more probably than that. Stuff that he could repair work that had to be done. The factory always went on vacation the first 2 weeks of July, so anything that had to be done, he did then. And just a little bit side, he did 18 years in the National Guard. Had to get out after 18 as a master sergeant because the vacation work he had to do was interfering with the summer camp stuff that the Guard was doing. So he was always, pardon my friends, sort of pissed that he never made 20 years. Yeah. But we go through there, I go with him and the other story, he and his crew built the front stack, and I will never forget him coming home from work one day. I was maybe 6 or 7. My mother goes, "So what'd you do today?" I was hanging off the stack about 100 feet off the ground. She was not happy. But anyway, I tried to get in there 3 or 4 years ago, where Tom has got the entrance. You could go in. There was a phone. You push the phone button. You talk to some human somewhere. I explained the situation. My dad had been there. Da da da. "I'm very sorry, sir. We cannot let you in." And then they moved out west, and nobody knows where they are today. But they still produce the beans. So they don't taste. I have to say, they don't taste the same. Honestly, you know.
Thank you.
They do them in the cans now, like Cook does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Cook
I
them.
would assume so.
Wow, okay.
Anyway.
All right, scratch build as much as you can. You know, this sort of came about years ago when I was working on a project and I needed several parts. I made out my list to Walters, contacted Walters, not available, out of stock. Everything, you know, nothing, you know, from that point on, I just sort of stopped talking with Walters and just sort of making things yourself. So it's a lot of fun. So styrene steps, pretty easy. Balsa sidewood, concrete piers, all these vent boxes, the fan covers. So this is a fine brass wire mesh that I got from PSC. Comes in about this size. I have used it for so many projects. It's like a lifetime supply of wire mesh, and it's just fantastic for projects. So I'm down to half that now. But those round vents, just dowels and styrene tubes, and very easy to build. Out front, those gas pipes out front, that this is a reasonable facsimile. I have no idea how they function, but these are the gas pipes for out front, soldered rail fence out front, and that's down there. And so the ornamental brick. So that was really kind of one of the fun parts. And so I was looking for thin brick, and this is a nice fine brick. It's not like N-scale architect, which is sort of an oversized brick. And this is a really nice fine brick, a 16th inch laminated onto the styrene. And so all of these horizontal rows are 3 bricks high. All of these vertical columns are 1 brick wide. And you just cut these off this nice sheet of brick material. And very easy, because you've got your lines all set and you just are cutting this brick. Now, even though they have adhesive on the back of this material, I still had to use CA gel to fix them on. And so that was a long process, but that was a nice. So here's that stack out front that I mentioned. Here's front door moved to the end, the back, and some of these other stacks that were in various places moved around. So everything sort of moved around. So here,
What makes that brick?
rail scale. Yeah, not miniatures, but rail scale company or something like that. But I've got it on this earlier
Thank you for
slide.
asking. I forgot.
I've got it on an earlier slide.
Oh.
And sorry. So one of the great pictures that I found. So here is the sign at night. And across the bay. And so I don't know when they took it out, but this is just a beautiful sign. So use your computer for a lot of things on prototype modeling. And so here is PowerPoint font, and searching through the 100 different fonts. Comic Sans MS. It's a slightly rounded slightly rounded form. I sized it and, tried to size what this building would take. And, sizing information here, played around with that. And then printed it out in red and blue and used a fine Sharpie to curve, to curve the letters and fill out the letters the way they should look. So I had these nice pictures of the way they should look. So I used just a fine Sharpie to fill those out. So I then printed that on 65 weight paper. I then laminated that onto a second piece of 65 weight paper with some transfer tape. Built my frame by just flipping the sign over and piece of wax paper and building the frame. So here's the kind of what I was trying to mimic, the rounded letters. Just out of styrene. There's the frame. And then I cut each letter out with scalpel blade and fine scissors. And not as bad as it sounds. It was pretty easy to because the computer's doing all your sizing, the computer's doing all your spacing. You're just gonna sort of cut these out, and that worked out very nicely. I then dipped each of these letters into some thin CA, and these letters were so tough. I mean, it was just like a piece of styrene. So, I mean, they were very tough letters. So I tried different colors, the red and the blue, and then painted them white, as you see now, because it shows up better. So that's the only reason. It just shows up better. And so even though this was blue and et cetera, so the white shows up better. And so there it is in position. And you can see I did not have any room to have a nice sprawling. And that's why I never did this, because I didn't have space. So finally I said, I need a project. So roof. Here's the again, you have no pictures of roofs. And here is AC unit that I just scratch built from styrene and my brass wire mesh. And so, I just sort of look on images, Google Images for HVAC units, and take the best of everything I find and make some units and put them on the roof. And that's all. And that's what this is. It's just a lot of roof items. This was just basic mat board. I just used some lines with a Sharpie, black Sharpie, weathered it with some tan pastels, put in some stacks, put in that stack that was in the 1940s picture. Lights, there's the lights on. I have a battery, I can turn the lights on, but so, and so the 4x4 windows allow you to see a little bit inside better than 8x8 windows. So, and here we are. So this was from the B&M can, and just, took a Sylvan cab and extended a chassis and built a box and put that on there. And so prototype structures, give you place. You all know where this is. It's doesn't happen to be on the B&M Railroad like mine. I'm on the B&M Railroad, but at least it's New England, and time and history, and so a little bit more reality. I just really enjoy doing the prototype structures because you don't have to come up with a lot of imagination. You really are using what's really there. And I don't think they have to be exact. You're trying to keep proportions and make it recognizable. And so everybody knows where this is. But it's inspired by, it's not It's not exact prototypical, and you end up writing your own instructions, and that's also fun. And you do enough, start with scratch building, and you do enough of that, you know how to put these things together. Any other questions?
I just want to say there, if you can't find that one font, there's an actual font called Hobo. That is what that's based on. It's typesetting years ago. But Hobo is the font name. It's almost the same, but that actually might be a little more rounded, but it should be pretty close. I mean, if you got a Microsoft, it's probably there.
I've never seen that listed.
Well, you might be able to find it still. I mean, I haven't looked at font catalog since the 70s and 80s, so who knows,
Okay.
but yeah.
All
But
right,
and they can use the same typeface and give it a different name too sometimes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't
Where do you get your map board? Where do you get your map board?
Harder and harder to find, but Michael's, I think, is the last time. And yeah, great for projects where you've got a lot of cutting in windows and want building thickness. I've done brick buildings with Monster Model Works, beautiful basswood laser cut brick. And I bought the 1/8" basswood, and I had to cut windows out of that. And that was nigh unto impossible.
Hmm.
I mean, that took a very long time to cut windows in 1/8" basswood. It was another different factory. Never again.
In the humidity, what do you do? Just a lot of bracing to keep the mat board? Is it fairly dimensionally stable in temperature and humidity extremes? If you do the right amount of bracing,
Yeah,
I mean, like compared to
so.
styrene or something.
Yeah, I haven't had problems, but and you're obviously trying to avoid high heat. You're trying to
Right.
avoid cold.
Oh yeah,
so,
but in normal ranges.
so in my basement, it's pretty
Yeah.
pretty
What do
nice.
you do? What do you use for bracing to prevent the warpage at all?
Well, for mat board, I mean 1/8" basswood.
Basswood is enough.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's
Great.
what it is enough.
Okay, but just 1/8, you don't have to go
Yeah.
nuts. That's
Right.